Hello everyone, and welcome once again to the Temple Institute Parsha class. My name is Gedalia Meyer, and I'm podcasting from Ma'ale Adumim in Israel. Everybody, to one degree or another, possesses an inexplicable attraction to the strange and the irrational. We all have this, even if we are reluctant to admit it. When something weird or totally bizarre is thrown our way, we cannot help but see what's going on. The more baffling, the better for most people. As much as we consider ourselves to be totally rational, this hidden urge for the irrational emerges periodically like a flower blooming in an arid desert. Can anyone imagine not looking if somebody spots what they claim to be a UFO in the sky? We may not believe it for a second, but there's no way in the world that we are not going to look. The same goes for a seance or somebody claiming to bend spoons. The skeptical defense arises almost immediately, but even the biggest skeptic has to check out what it is that they don't believe. There is no remedy for this attraction to the strange. It is simply human curiosity, about as old and as human a trait as there is. When things move over from the bizarre to the truly mystical, things take a slight turn towards disinterest. Mystical things may be weird, but they don't hold quite the attraction that genuinely strange things have. The mystical has the quality of the rational lurking deep down within. It is simply another way of looking at the world. It has an agenda. On top of all that, mystical things tend to be pretty profound and not necessarily all that impressive on a physical level. They usually require a certain amount of deep thought to really get. That unquestionably lowers them on the attractiveness scale, at least for those who are only looking for a thrill. But there's also no question that many people are absolutely drawn to the mystical. Rational stuff like math and anything with set rules may be easily graspable and have that element of predictability, but they lack something in the imaginary. We all use our imaginations, even when nothing particularly beneficial will come from it. The mystical is almost an exclusive avenue into the imaginary. Its draw is that it is not grounded strictly in the rational, so there is always a chance of something strange and unexpected coming down the pipeline. Within the world of religion, there has always been a mystical path that a minority of believers take. Islam and Christianity certainly had such paths. Eastern religions like Hindi or Buddhism seem to thrive on it. All religions have to have rules and guidelines for belief, but they also have methods of venturing beyond those guidelines into normally unexplored territories. Judaism is no exception to this. Mysticism, as far as we know, has always been there in one form or another. There have been times when it was suppressed because it was deemed too haphazard and too dangerous. But usually the mystical has been either begrudgingly tolerated or out and out recommended. It may not be for everyone, but everyone has the option open. This week's Parsha is called Bechukotai. That is a strange-looking word, and it translates into an entire phrase. It means, in my statutes, a declaration at the beginning of the Parsha that things will go well if the Israelites walk in the statutes of God. All kinds of good things will happen, including security, plenty of food, population growth, and a deep connection with God. The converse is next described if they don't follow the statutes of God. Needless to say, things won't go nearly as well. At first, it is only the reverse of the good things, but the bad stuff doesn't seem to end. The Parsha contains the first of the two tochacha sections in the Torah, meaning sections of rebuke. This is the shorter of the two, but it is every bit as harsh as the other, which comes up towards the end of the book of Deuteronomy. It is a pretty short Parsha, being as this rebuke takes up the bulk of it, and we can only handle so much of that. The truth is that there is nothing in this Parsha that lends itself to the mystical. So if anybody is looking for some mystical insights, this is probably not the Parsha to go to. It's all about following the rules and suffering for any deviations. It may be necessary to hear this kind of thing every once in a while, but we also need a little of the mystical to spice things up. It just happens that there's something else going on right as this podcast is being written. It's a one-day event that is really part of a much longer process. The process is a counting of days between the holidays of Passover and Shavuot. There is always a total of 50 days from one to the other, so a total of 49 distinct days have to be counted to mark the temporal trail from one to the other. This counting period is called the Omer, which really means something like a bushel, since it refers to a certain barley offering that was brought at the start of the count. The count ends on the 50th day, which is the holiday of Shavuot. Christians know this period as the Pentecost because of the relationship with the count of 50. On this also, there is not much that easily lends itself to the mystical. However, Jews being who they were, and that having been greatly desirous of adding mystical flavor to the most bland ritual, they managed to inject a powerful element of mysticism into this daily count. While most simply recite the count of the particular day they are currently on, some make a brief mention or even meditate on the mystical qualities that have been ascribed to that particular day. Each day has its own unique mystical quality, and in discovering that quality, great vistas can be opened up in the mind. There is one particular day in this count that has been granted a unique status that distinguishes it from all others. This is the count that came on Wednesday night and Thursday of this past week. It is the 33rd day of the Omer, better known as Logbaomer. The Hebrew letters were used for millennia as a way of counting numerically, with each letter having an assigned numerical counterpart. The letter Lamed represents 30, and the letter Gimel represents 3. The two of them together, of course, come to 33, and they are written out to spell the word Log. Thus, the 33rd day of the Omer count is Logbaomer. Logbaomer became special because it is recorded in the Talmud as the day when a certain plague that was killing thousands of rabbinical students came to an apparently abrupt end. This was probably the so-called Antonine plague of the second half of the 2nd century in various parts of the Roman Empire. It was probably an outbreak of smallpox, which is almost invariably quite deadly. The day these rabbinic students stopped dying was recognized as a cause for celebration, hence Logbaomer. But this alone wouldn't give much of a mystical element to Logbaomer. That was added later on in a manner that is fittingly shrouded in mystery. It all starts with another story included in the Talmud that is apparently unrelated to the first, though they probably happened within a few decades of each other. It involves the very famous rabbinic teacher Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. He, like the students who were dying during this plague, was a student of the great Rabbi Akiva. It seems that he got himself into hot water with the Roman authorities, probably around the year 150. He severely criticized them for pretty much everything they did, claiming that none of it was for the benefit of the citizens of the various nations of the empire, but entirely for the benefit of the Romans. He had to run away along with his son Eliezer. This is where things get interesting. They hid in a cave in the northern part of Israel for no less than 12 years. They did nothing in that cave for that enormous amount of time other than study Torah, minimizing their physical activities almost to a halt. They heard some sort of heavenly voice telling them that it was safe to leave the cave. When they left, they spotted simple Jews working their fields and engaging in what could be called mundane activities. They were outraged by this letdown after 12 years of being involved in nothing but spiritual endeavors. When their outrage threatened to undo the steady and simple lifestyle of the Jews around the cave, that same voice instructed them to return to the cave to rethink what had happened. After another year, they left again. This time, upon seeing the mundane lifestyle of the Jews in the area, Eliezer again couldn't contain himself. But his father, Rabbi Shimon, told him that not everyone is capable of what they achieved in that cave, and that they should allow the world to go on as it was, and the two of them would handle the deep spiritual stuff. When they were walking along the fields, they spotted an old man who was carrying 2 bundles of twigs on the eve of Shabbat. They asked him why he was doing this, and he told them that one was for the commandment of remembering the Shabbat, and the other was for the commandment of keeping the Shabbat. This little reminder of how simple things in life, with simple commemorations and individuals doing what they are capable of to honor the traditions, are the bread and butter of Jewish life, confirmed in them the conviction to not insist that everyone rise to their personal spiritual level. Tradition has it that Rabbi Shimon and his son spent those 12 years engaged in the deepest of Jewish mysticism. Specifically, it is said that the core teachings of the major work of Jewish mysticism, the Zohar, which first appeared in northern Spain in the late 13th century, were formulated in that cave. Whether any of this is historically true or not is a matter of belief. But mysticism tends to not worry about technical things like historical truth and chronology. The important thing is the mystical element and where it enables us to go. If this little story can take a book like the Zohar and lift it out of medieval Spain right back into pre-Talmudic days of Roman persecution, it adds an incalculable power to the text. What does this have to do with Logbaomer? Logbaomer is the traditional day of Rabbi Shimon's death. The commemoration of his death is not regarded as a tragedy, but a celebration. He left this mundane world and went to a dimension in which his mystical insights were not simply mystical, but real. We celebrate with bonfires and tens of thousands of people visiting his traditional grave, the life of a person who has come to represent the mystical side of Judaism. It may not be all that rational, and it may even be pretty weird, but it is fascinating. There is a good deal of mystery to life, whether we care to admit it or not. Having this 49-day count available as a brief avenue into the mystical maybe isn't such a terrible idea. Having this one day in that count to celebrate this one individual who has come to represent what the mystical adds to Judaism seems like a wonderful break from humdrum existence. Shabbat Shalom.